What is the root of all this fear? See, most of us are inclined to trim the branches of fear. Right? I'm afraid of this thing, therefore let me get rid of it. Or let me go to somebody who will help me to be free of fear, of that particular expression of fear. The psychologists, the priests, the analysts, the latest gurus and all the business. But we're not concerned with the trimming of the tree of fear, but rather to uncover the root of fear. So that when you see the root of it and have depth of understanding of the root, then if you have such an understanding and it's an insight, then fear disappears completely. You're no longer afraid psychologically. Physically is a different matter. Physically, one must be careful. One must be rational, sane. Unless you're extraordinarily neurotic, then that's a different matter. But physically, one must be watchful of danger, as you will be watchful of a precipice, as you will be watchful of a dangerous animal. And perhaps human beings are becoming more and more dangerous than any animal. So one has to be watchful of human beings, the terrorists, the politicians. Are there any politicians here? And very watchful of gurus. And so on and on and on. So, one understands the watchfulness, the danger, physical. But what is the root of psychological fear? Please ask yourself. Don't accept my challenge. Ask yourself, what is the root of all? Don't say, I don't know, and just leave it like that. Or draw some conclusion. If you do, it'll prevent you from finding out the root of it. If you say, I really don't know, right, what the root of the fear is, then you start with humility. Then you say, I really don't know, but I'm going to find out. But if you start with the arrogance of saying, I can solve it, I know, I have all the facts about fear, then you are starting with a conclusion, with a sense of hope, which doesn't mean you must be in despair to ask it. But if you are really deeply concerned with the nature and the structure of fear at its very depth, what is the root of fear? Those of you who have read or heard the speaker before, don't say, yes, I know it. That's a cheap trick. Because you have heard somebody tell you that. And that may be the truth, but it's not the truth. It's somebody else's. There is no your truth or my truth. But if you accept a statement made by somebody like this person and say, yes, I've heard that before, but it hasn't got rid of my fear, then you are living, then language is driving you. You understand? Language is driving you. Language is using you. But if you are free of what you have heard before, but actually demand now, as you are sitting there, to find out what's the essence, the root, the basis of all fear. Then, as you don't know, you come to it afresh. You come to it with a certain sense of curiosity to find out. But if you come to it already with some conclusion, well, there is no possibility of your understanding the root of it. So let's find out together, afresh, what's the root of this whole nature and the structure of fear. When you want to find out, if you have a motive, that is, I must be free of fear, which is a motive, then that motive gives a direction to your inquiry. So, the motive which gives a direction prevents you from inquiry. This is simple, isn't it? If I have a motive in order to inquire into fear, because I want to get rid of fear, then I'm already given a direction to it. Right? Because my desire is to get rid of it. Not to understand the nature and the structure and the depth of fear. I only want to get rid of the word fear. So the word fear is driving us. You understand? Whereas if you look at it, if you are free of the word and say, what is this fear which I have lived with for so long? What is it? Is it time? Time being yesterday, today and tomorrow. Sun setting, sun rising. Which is fear the result of time? Something happened which was fearful a year ago or yesterday, and that fear of that incident remains. And the memory of that fear, of that thing, is called fear. You're following all this? The memory of that incident which took place here or yesterday has left a certain remembrance, and that remembrance says there is fear. Right? So, recollection of a word called fear, we say that is fear. Whereas we're trying to find out, being free of the word, what is the essence of it? Are you following all this? Is it getting too tiresome, all this? Okay. What's the root of it? I say to myself, because I'm a very serious person, and I've got plenty of energy, I must find it out. But I don't want to live with fear. It's too absurd, too illogical, irrational. What is the essence of it? Is it time? Then we can proceed to inquire into why human beings live constantly in a state of fear. Right? Should we go into that? Why? You, as a human being, who is the representative of all humanity, right? I wonder if you realize that you, as a human being, represent the entire human mind. Because you suffer, you're uncertain, you're caught in certain beliefs, or you're conditioned. You're British, you're French, you're German, or this or that. And you believe in this, in Jesus or Christ, or somebody else doesn't believe in that. And you are a Hindu, a Muslim, you follow? So are you aware that in your relationship, in your daily activity, there is sense of great fear? Right? Is one aware of it? If one is, then to have... Now look, if you have fear, the natural response, I won't call it natural, the irrational response is to cultivate courage, whatever that may mean, or to run away from it, or rationalize it. Why shouldn't I be afraid? It's natural, and so on and so on. Or you identify your fear and yourself, which yourself and fear are one. It's not you separate from fear. So that fear, which is you, identifies itself with something greater and says, in that surrender to the greater, I've lost fear. We have played all these kind of games for centuries. And we still have fear. At the end of a million years, every human being right through the world has some kind of fear. Now to have a quick insight into it, and therefore be totally free from it, is that possible? Because fear is the most dreadful thing. It makes, all the rest of what the result of fear is. Neuroticism of every kind, escape into various forms of entertainment, religious and otherwise. Rationalizing fears and accepting fear as part of our daily existence. Now we're asking, is it possible to have an insight into the whole nature and structure of fear and be free of it? Don't you want to know if you can be free of fear? Or do you accept, as we accept so many things, as part of life? If you don't accept it as part of life, then what is the nature of fear? What is the root of fear? What is the substance, the structure, the whole movement of fear? Not only fear of one's wife or husband, girl, fear in its entirety, not one particular form of fear. Don't you want to find out? In the sense, don't you want to give your mind, your thought, your being, your whole energy to find out whether it's possible to eradicate totally fear? Fear has many forms. One of the major factors of fear is attachment. Attachment to person, attachment to an ideal, to a belief, to attachment to a piece of furniture. You know what attachment is. And where there is attachment, there is inevitably the fear of losing. And is it possible to exist without isolating, without attachment? Understand my question? Is it possible for a human being who has lived 10,000 years and more, lived always in fear as part of his life, from the caveman till now? Is it possible to uncondition himself from fear? As we said, one of the factors of fear is attachment. To find out if one is attached, not avoid it, not say, find out, to see if one is attached to something. To your guru, to your knowledge, to your furniture, to your friend, to your wife, girl, boy, or whatever it is. Attached to your country. Where there is attachment, there is jealousy. There is possessiveness. There is a sense of identifying oneself with something else. And when there is that attachment and identification, there is always uncertainty. Isn't that, these are facts, aren't they? No? So, can you be free of attachment? Not tomorrow or when you are on the deathbed. Then, of course, it's very simple to be detached. You can't argue with death.
The fear is simply because you're not living with life, you're living in your mind. Your fear is always about what's going to happen next. That means your fear is always about that which does not exist. If your fear is about the non-existent, your fear is 100% imaginary. If you're suffering the non-existential, we call that insanity. So, people may be in just socially accepted levels of insanity, but if you're afraid or if you're suffering anything which does not exist, it amounts to insanity, isn't it? People are always suffering, either what happened yesterday or what may happen tomorrow. So your suffering is always about that which does not exist, simply because you're not rooted in reality. You're always rooted in your mind. Mind is… one part of it is memory, another part of it is imagination. Both of them are in one way imagination, because both of them don't exist right now. You're lost in your imagination, that's the basis of your fear. If you were rooted in reality, there would be no fear.